morning, my friends. I'm Pastor Ben Hayes from First Baptist Church, Dadeville, Alabama, bringing you our thought for the day on this Thursday. You notice I'm wearing the same shirt as I was wearing yesterday. That's because I'm recording this yesterday because I'm going to be out of town for a couple of days here. But I wanted to make sure we kept up with our thought for the day. Hope that you have a great day today. Look at 1 Peter chapter 2. And remember, we left off in verse 11 and 12 where Peter's begging begging the followers of Jesus, I should say, to abstain from these fleshly lusts and to live a life that is pleasing to the Father, so that the lost people around us will actually defend us when evildoers say bad things about us, but also so that by our good works, the good things that we're doing, the way that we're living our lives, that they're watching us, that in the day of visitation, when Jesus comes again, they will not have an excuse, whether they have trusted him or not, because they have seen Jesus in you and they've had that opportunity. And my hope and my goal is that people around me will see Jesus in me and they'll come to know him, so that when Jesus does return, that they get to go home to be with him as well. That's what he's talking about here. So listen to what he says in verse 13, continuing this same line. Therefore, submit yourselves to every ordinance of man for the Lord's sake, whether to the king as supreme, or to governors, as to those who are sent by him for the punishment of evildoers and for the praise of those who do good. Now this is important, because both Paul and Peter have made sure to include this in their letters, that as citizens of this sovereign country, the United States of America, and understand Israel was a sovereign nation, however, they were under the thumb of the Roman Empire. They were having to follow their rules and their regulations. And Peter says, submit yourselves to every ordinance of man for the Lord's sake. In other words, don't break the law. Now, what law is he talking about? All of them. Don't speed. Don't run stop signs. Don't commit murder. All those things that are against the law in the United States of America. Now, does that mean that we have to obey everything the government says? Absolutely not. Paul makes it clear, Peter's going to make it clear, that the thing that we need to understand is we follow God's law first, loving him with all of our heart, soul, mind, and strength, loving our neighbors as ourselves, and that will help us determine whether or not we're going to obey man's laws. But as much as possible, we're to submit ourselves to the ordinance of men, whether it's the king, president, our governor, Governor Ivey, or even our mayor, those people who are in that position of authority, because in other places, what we read in God's word is that God has put those in those places for our good and his glory. Now, that doesn't mean they're always perfect. Doesn't mean we always agree with them. Doesn't mean we even voted for them. But they were put there, for one thing, because they're the leaders we deserve. Now, that's a scary thought sometimes. The leaders that we deserve, that take us in the wrong direction, that turn our country into something that it shouldn't be. And I'm not talking about any individual, but I'm just saying that there are times when we have to stand up and say, this is not right. But for the most part, we can follow those laws. Now think about this. The Roman Empire was the one that was responsible for the crucifixion of Jesus. The Roman Empire is the one responsible for persecuting Christians and putting Paul to death and Peter to death. Understand, they both said, submit yourselves to the ordinances of man, because those leaders were sent for the punishment of evildoers and for the praise of those who do good. Now, I love in 1 Timothy where Paul says that we're to pray for all of these leaders. Now, here's what we need to do. We need to pray first and foremost for their salvation. We don't want them to have a profession of faith. We want them to have a possession of faith. We want them to have a true life-changing moment. Not that they can stand up there and say, I go to this church, or I go to that church, or I believe this. But what they will stand up and say is, I've had an encounter with Jesus Christ himself, and he's changed me completely from the inside out. That's what we're to pray for our leaders. And when that happens, understand, then they're going to do the right things, and they're going to make the right decisions. And listen to what he says. He says, this is the will of God. This is the will of God, that by doing good you may put to silence the ignorance of foolish men. We do the right things. Listen, we don't want to draw attention to ourselves by saying, hey, I'm not going to follow your laws. I'm not going to follow your rules. I'm not going to do what you have told me to do. But we are going to live a life that is pleasing to the Father, obeying the laws of men until and unless they refute or go against the laws of God. Then we have a responsibility, a decision to make. What kind of decision are you going to make? Think about that today, because I believe in the very near future we're going to find ourselves forced to make those kinds of decisions. Pray about it, and I'll see you back here tomorrow. God bless.